Welcome to Growth Marketing Camp, where we sit down with our favorite marketers to demystify growth and give you the insights to help turn your next campaign into a major success. Let's get into it. All right, welcome to another fun and exciting episode of Growth Marketing Camp. With me are two of my new favorite people from what we'll call the Fintech Rocketship company called Divvy. Rachel Cottam, who's the Content Marketing Manager, and Stephanie Newton, the SEO Manager. Rachel and Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks for having us here.
Yeah. One of the reasons that I initially reached out to you both regarding just hearing what you have to say on the show was that you won a SAMY award from the Utah Business Publication. I wanted to hear a little bit about what's the deal with the SAMY? What is the SAMY?
The SAMY is a great award to be known for here in Utah. Utah Business sponsors the award every year. It's the Sales and Marketers of the Year award. And we were entered in the Content Marketing Campaign of the Year category. So we were nominated and won alongside a few other great organizations here in Utah, primarily because of our push around the CARES Act, PPP, the COVID financial environment that we all had to respond to last year.
Boy, what a year for figuring that out. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to dig into that, I'm sure. Just for the context for folks who aren't from or haven't been into the Utah tech scene lately, that they call the Silicon Slopes. I spent some time there myself, have some good friends at Divvy, but give me maybe a little bit more background. What are some of the companies that you think are kind of household names that are coming out of there soon? Of course, Divvy is becoming a household name, especially in B2B. But what other companies and brands would you think of when you think of Utah?
Qualtrics. They just went public recording on the 29th, so the 28th.
Yeah, they went public in a big way. So that's a big one. Qualtrics, definitely. I personally think of like Vivint. I see a Vivint smart home sign on nearly every house in my neighborhood. There's a couple of others. Anything off the top of your heads?
Yeah, so Domo, Pluralsight, those are some of the unicorns that have come out of Silicon Slopes. And in fact, we just recently announced our Series D funding, which brought us to a 1.6 billion valuation. So we are honored to be added to that group of the previous unicorns that came here out of Utah Valley.
Yeah, that's so exciting. So well deserved. Having seen the growth, it's just incredible what you all do there. The product and the market position is just so strong. But one of the reasons I ask is to give some context around the SAMY Award, that this is a big freaking deal. So when people are listening to this episode, for all you out there, pay attention. What we're about to talk about next really matters. These are campaigns that had significant impact that counted up against some of the biggest competition out there, some really well-known brands. So this is great. So Rachel and Stephanie, maybe let's go in order. Rachel first, what's your background and how'd you get into your current role? And then Stephanie, we'll ask you the same question.
Yeah, my background's a bit non-traditional. Before coming into marketing, I actually taught high school English for a couple of years, which was actually a really natural transition into the human side of marketing. Yep. It helped me really understand some of those personas that we're working with. Obviously, if you're not marketing to humans, then you're doing it wrong. Yep. So after that, I started out as a writer at another startup here in Utah, learned a bit of SEO, started working on longer form content. And then here at Divvy, I've done content managing, communications, PR, social, a little bit of everything, really.
That's great. It's so funny that you come from the English background. I have a degree in English. I studied that with a mind towards teaching, but ended up in sales and marketing. So I can appreciate that. Stephanie, where do you come from?
I started in SEO 7 years ago. I had a decent stint over at an agency working on Fortune 500 brands. Nice. And then decided to have a change of pace. So moved from Oregon to Utah 4 years ago and started working for an affiliate review sites group where it's all similar to PC Mag, household consumer reports type sites. But I really found my niche at this company working on B2B sites and helping create an ideal content SEO roadmap around how to help small businesses. And so I was in the market of looking for like that next step that would elevate my understanding of small business and understand more of the SaaS space. Sure. And the magical LinkedIn brought me to Divvy a year ago.
Great next step. Congrats. I think that was a wise move. What does the company do? I said Fintech, I said Rocketship, but what does that mean in human terms? What do you guys actually do for the folks that you help?
Yeah, so Divvy is free expense management software. We've combined corporate cards and software into one platform to get rid of reimbursements, get rid of all the paper processes around expense reporting. And our mission is really to help businesses in every industry to grow and to thrive. So we work with a lot of finance leaders. We work with everyone from the employee spending on the card to the CFO at the top.
Fascinating. I'm sure making content for all of those different personas and building campaigns around all of them, top and bottom of funnel, is a lot of fun, but also quite a stretch. So we'll dig into some of that. And then thinking about customers that you've worked with that would be outstanding names that folks might have heard of. Are there any that come to mind?
The ones that we really enjoy highlighting are the ones that we have reached out to create case studies. So our most recent one was with Noom, the health and wellness app based out of New York City. However, we have clients such as the Utah Jazz. But of course, we also have very small local restaurant franchises. We have plenty of like lash and manicure boutiques. It really scales everything.
Well, that's exciting. I think that's what we're going to dig into here with this campaign, and particularly the timing of the one you got the SAMY award for especially. But let's talk about, what was the goal of the campaign? Who were you trying to reach in terms of audience, and what did you want to do for them?
Every marketing campaign is targeted towards raising brand awareness, generating quality leads, right?
Sure.
And as content marketers, we're particularly focused on providing that real value for our business leaders. So for us, it comes back to the basics. We will really probably hammer on that a couple times today, but we care about showing empathy, showing understanding, and being intentional about the keywords that we're targeting. So this specific campaign was in response to the COVID-19 crisis, like we mentioned last spring. And so our goal was to create content that Google would push to the top of search results. And like Stephanie mentioned, would also provide true value for the small business owner who was struggling, who our hearts were going out to at that time. And Stephanie can speak to that keyword research more specifically. She's an expert in that SEO arena.
Yeah. What are some of the keywords that you all were targeting and trying to get ranked for?
It really started off with trying to understand what sort of programs the SBA, the Small Business Association, provide. The PPP loan is blended into quite a bit of the bigger loan processes that the government provides. So you have the emergency disaster loan program, for example, where this is somewhat of a spin-off of it. So people are going to be comparing, should I apply for an SBA disaster loan versus should I apply for the PPP? And then you go through the who, what, when, wheres, and whys, trying to find those, what you have to guess are going to be the frequently asked questions for these. So who can qualify for either of them? What's the differences? What are the similarities? What are the requirements? Can I apply for both? And really hammering in those FAQs that you can find that would have previously worked or do work for past SBA programs, and blending it into this new program, as well as a bit of forward thinking, a bit of Google Trends analysis to determine where those next steps are going to be. After the people apply for this loan, what are they going to do with it? How are they going to repay it? Is there going to be a forgiveness program? And of course, we're crossing our fingers the government puts out decent enough information for Danica Holdaway, our absolutely stunning writer who really took the lead of writing all the copy on the site for this.
Incredible.
To dive in and create a human answer to government legalese.
Would you say that's part of the magic of this campaign? And we're calling it a singular campaign, but it's really a collection of content effort here. A lot of focus around this emerging challenge that the world was experiencing collectively. But is part of the magic of this campaign translating government speak into human speak? One, is it the most challenging thing in the entire world because it sounds like it, but is that part of the magic of what worked here for you guys?
I really do believe it has a lot to do with that. It's very similar to when you start diving into having to write tax content as a non-CPA.
Yeah.
It's also somewhat of a unicorn when you find those people who are able to explain difficult processes to the common folk, somewhat of a Bill Nye.
Yeah.
PPP is what we were trying to go after. And we want to distill this down to the bare bones, get you the information that you want, and realize that we're human too, and we also struggled, and we're going to tell you that we struggled trying to understand these things.
So some brand component there that sounds like maybe coming out.
Yeah, and speaking as one of the writers on this campaign, Danica, like Stephanie pointed out, is a rock star. She's a workhorse, and she really pumped out a lot of the content. And then myself, and we had one other internal team member who lent a hand during this campaign as well. It was very research heavy.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure we weren't misrepresenting anything. We wanted to make sure that if one of our pages popped up at the top of Google search results, it wasn't just helping our marketing efforts. We wanted to make sure they were getting the very best information, the most easily digestible information, and then that it led them to a source to actually access those resources. So it's important to point out that as well, that at this time we had launched a completely digital application for the PPP loan with Cross River Bank. And this was one of the first all digital applications that was created at the time. So not only were we able to get them this information, but we were able to get over 4,000 PPP applications approved through that system in order to actually get the funds into the hands of small business owners, which, I mean, for me, that's the best part of this campaign, is that we really made a difference. It's so heartwarming to me that our whole organization, like the whole entire Divvy team, was rallied 24/7 behind this cause. And it was a cool time to be at Divvy for sure.
Yeah, that's incredible. And one of the things that this calls out for me is just thinking about how a marketer has to be, in this case, as urgently obsessed with information as someone who owns a business that might go under because of a disaster. That's a lot of caring, a lot of urgency. You really have to try 10x harder than on any other piece of content I'd imagine to get it right, to make sure it's valuable, make sure it's actionable. So obviously deserving of an award. Maybe we'll call it the SAMY. It feels like you've earned it, but that's fantastic. What are some of the channels that you use to promote this content? Because it sounds like you built a lot of great content, answering current questions, future kind of thinking, predicting where those questions are going to be, like, hey, how can we spend this? How do we repay it? What happens if we can't? That sort of thing makes total sense. But then you've got to go get this into the hands of the actual, people who need to read it. And that can be a challenge, especially with things like SEO, or like just getting ranked for something quickly is going to be a challenge. And there's a lot of folks competing for the space. So any explanation, maybe breakdown of the channels where you found were particularly successful, or those that you used?
The primary channel, honest to goodness, was organic. The amount of heavy research that we had put into these articles, as well as having a better than normal, or what would be like a baseline sort of authority to our website, created this concoction of, okay, Google doesn't just want to serve SBA.gov content.
Yeah.
They want to show a healthy mixture of other your money, your life experiences, where through the blessing of Google's algorithm, we ended up, and the fact that our writers are freaking talented, we ended up ranking extremely well for the vast majority of the key terms that we were targeting. So it was a little bit of luck, but primarily the fact that we were so absolutely dedicated to the proper internal linking structure, really driving back down to the absolute basics of what makes a good article for SEO. So really hammering in that expertise, authority, and trust. Dr. Marie Haynes has written a multitude of fantastic articles on this thought of you have to become a trustful and authoritative thought leader, as well as to show your expertise in this place. So Divvy was in a very specific area where we are related to finance, we are related to money, and this topic is tangentially related. So we already had that a relationship built, and it was all just ready for us to launch it.
I can imagine that's a challenge to have an authority in terms of the algorithms that compares anything close to an SBA, right? That's where we go as the de facto answer. That's where you're researching to get the answers that you're going to produce into human content. But that's great. That's incredible. So organic, definitely top rank. What kind of maybe fell underneath that you guys can think of?
So we naturally promoted our stuff on our social accounts, making sure that we were sharing those out in a timely manner. But Stephanie's not kidding when organic is really what made the difference for us. The number, in fact, is 4,211% growth from organic traffic in that month. And the thing is, we normally use that number to exaggerate, to be hyperbolic, like, oh yeah, 4,000% growth. But that's legitimately the number that you see on our Google Analytics. And that's what's so impressive to me. Is like Stephanie said, it's not just magic. There's no shortcuts here. You really have to build the best content, and you have to share it as well. But most of what we did was that organic channel.
So then maybe thinking back to ahead of this campaign, you couldn't assemble a crack team in a moment's notice to build out content that was going to rank against SBA and be up there in Google and produce all this incredible result for you and for the readers and consumers of your content, it had to be a long time coming. So obviously this has been a part of the Divvy brand for a long time, is educating business owners and leaders and financiers. Maybe talk to me a little bit about a history of that team and how it's gotten to the point that on a dime, you could say, yes, we're going to go produce 100 articles or a dozen articles overnight on these key topics and rank for them. What's maybe the history of the team there?
That's an interesting question because Divvy is still growing. And I only came over to Divvy about a year and a half ago. I think Stephanie hits her year mark in March. So
1 month.
Nice.
So we're still a growing team. And my background was definitely in content marketing that focused on SEO first, targeting those high business relevance, high volume keywords and doing it really well. So when we said we were going to hammer on the basics, that's where we're starting from. When I joined Divvy, I was a content marketing party of one. And then we brought in Danica, our head writer, and Stephanie, our SEO, shortly before the COVID crisis began. So while you said this couldn't have happened overnight, it probably couldn't have in a normal situation. But
a stroke of luck in your timing there.
Yeah, and the three of us, that was our background. We were writers first, communicators first. So we knew that we weren't just going in this trying to win at marketing. We were going in this trying to educate the small business owner who desperately needed help. And in that sense, we were able to kind of set this up overnight.
Totally makes sense. Let's talk about the normal question I would ask is what made the campaign stand out from any others. But when you have a metric that says something in the thousands in terms of growth, like that's pretty clear. But I think also the brand, or let's say not the brand, but the people at Divvy, and I've seen this across social individually from people that I know directly or have seen from even leadership sharing social, very personal stories. Like there's actually a level of caring behind that you can't fake. You can't get a writer to create the content that sounds caring enough and then is maintained over some period of time that's authentic. I mean, this is authentic caring. So it stands out, I imagine, in the very real, tangible impact you could have on those business owners and leaders. But let's talk about if you could do it over again, like 4,000% growth, how would you get to 10,000% growth? Was there any lever that you wished you could have pulled or something that maybe you learned that you're carrying into the future?
Well, we definitely have access to more channels now. So diving into a better email campaign, putting in some paid ads. We actually have a social channel, like our LinkedIn is actually pretty decent now. We actually get some traction on it after we put a bit more love and focus later on in the year. So we have all these other channels that are at our disposal. So we would just be syncing with more than just three of us.
That totally makes sense. So maybe leveraging a few more of the channels that you now have opened up a little bit wider. That makes sense. Rachel, any other thoughts?
It would have been great to hire a few more writers.
That too.
I mean, a content manager is always going to say that. Let's bring in more writers. But I think that probably would have been it, just really amping up the volume that we were pushing out. And to be fair, the posts and the articles that we put out, the count that we put out in April of last year, I think more than doubled the count from the 2019 year in its entirety. Amazing. So we were really
had around 20 articles pushed approximately. Last year we published over 100.
Yeah, so we were sprinting in April. And I love that you brought that back to the Divvy culture. It's not something that you can fake. From the minute I walked inside the Divvy doors for the first time, I could feel that there was a genuine caring there. The product team is customer obsessed. They want to make sure that the customer is having a delightful experience first and foremost. And if there's an issue, that's what we solve. And that's what we try to mirror in the content, is that focus on the real needs of these finance leaders. We know that those finance leaders we work with, CFOs, controllers, VPs of finance, your admins, they're down in the trenches and they actually can see the day-to-day movements of their budgets, right? Yep. And so that's the mindset that we're coming from as an organization. And I just love that you brought that back. The whole mission of Divvy is to give finance leaders control, right? Control of their financial future. And I can't think of a better mission than empowering business owners in that way.
And obviously, having been a Divvy user, right? Knowing the product well enough now and just seeing how the product's built, it resonates. You can't just have content that drives people to awareness and interest and a little bit of action, because it's not going to convert to revenue. And then there will be like, hey, this was a really cool thing. We brought in a bunch of leads and then it fell apart. But there's this complete structure. It's been set up. It's been growing for years, but then this was just an accelerator. So what we're really talking about is pouring gas on the flames, right? It's not like something was born out of this, but rather you accelerated what was already a successful trajectory. So the unfortunate thing for our listeners and those who watch this on YouTube is going to be, there's no hack. There's really no trick to it. The fact is you got to get down to the basics. And I can appreciate that as someone who always talks about no fluff, get down to the basics. I totally agree. Have there been any results from the campaign that have made you think differently? Obviously opening up some other channels, but has this impacted any future campaigns?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, we knew that helping business owners and these finance leaders was our focus, but we have absolutely doubled down on that mission. Like you said, it wasn't a change. It just, was flame on the fire. Since March of last year, right? Our strategy has been to ideate content that focuses on not only the COVID-19 landscape, but it helps to keep our customers educated and informed, and not only customers, but prospects as well. Any of those business owners or business leaders, we want them to be empowered with the information they need from the marketing side, as well as the tools from the product side. So Stephanie can tell you more of this, but she's got the data as far as how that has transformed our featured snippets, ranking keywords, and backlinks as well. She can tell you how that's transformed us.
Yeah, Stephanie, give us some of the juice here.
When you publish 100 pieces of content, over 100, I think it was around 115 pieces of content in 1 year with approximately 1.5 writers at all times, it just creates this atmosphere of, okay, you have to distill it down to who's this content for and how can I get links from it as well. But then you have to distill back to the basics. If you just write really, really good content and you're a topical master of this content already, you're going to get natural links.
Yeah.
And from that, we end up sharing it through our internal channel where we send things out on social from. We ended up using them as internal pieces as well. Where,
like for educating your internal staff members, like,
yes,
hey, go read this content so you're more able to speak to this?
Exactly. So the content that we create facilitates the knowledge that our sales team has, that our partner team has, that everyone else internally has. And
by the way, that's a big burden. Like there are whole departments dedicated to internal comms and marketing. So that's quite the burden, but maybe also speaks to why your team members all know the struggles so well, or all understand the customer so well, why it all kind of resonates in this big circular fashion. You're all learning from the same sources. So that's quite a burden. So congratulations on doing so well with it. But wow, yeah, that totally makes sense.
And so when you create this content that is going to be used for absolutely everyone, and you've done your darndest to make it the best content ever, you're going to get natural links. We've received a lot in the hundreds, if not even more with the recent PR releases, as well as the amount of focus that we've been trying to get with featured snippets. We've captured well over 100 so far. They haven't been our primary focus, but that is one of my passions. So it's on my 2021 to-do list to do an internal training for our copywriters on that. So one of the residual benefits of this, if we just remove all the content that we created for COVID or PPP or SBA, anything government or pandemic related, was the fact that the content brought in doubled our non-PPP core page traffic just naturally.
Okay.
So when we became topical owners of PPP content, it just raised the bar or the authority of our non-PPP content.
Totally makes sense.
Just overall. And it's been a residual benefit through this year and is continuing. January will be our best month organically ever.
Incredible.
It also helps that the PPP relaunched in December, or it was announced in December for second draw, and this month it's back. So the program is also providing us a secondary push, which also increases the authority of our non-PPP content. So we're creating a resource that helps a lot of people. Google is identifying the fact that our content is extremely helpful and is lifting the rest of the site.
That's fantastic. I think it sounds like maybe this has honed in some of the previous ideation, honed in some of your best practices, and really helped you figure out where you want to double down. And it doesn't sound like the team's grown a ton. You're still doing a lot with a few folks there. Is that right?
Yeah, we have people who are working more than one person should humanly be able to. Yep. There really is that kind of rallying cry that we've talked about at Divvy. We all believe in the mission and we are all sprinting to make it happen as quickly as we can. That number that Stephanie shared is so significant that our product pages, our core pages talking about the actual expense management side of things lifted, I think the number is like 45% in growth, just because of that other content effort that we were working on. And so people who look down on content and say, oh, it's a long-term play, it's not worth it. It is a long-term play, but it is definitely worth it. And it will make a difference, not only for the education aspect of things for that top of funnel, but further down the line as well.
Totally agreed. And speaking as a buyer, now is the time, and it has been for a few years, where even if I've already had discussions, even gotten a proposal from a salesperson, I'm still going to look at their content, and the more authority I can disseminate from that and say, yeah, these people really understand. I understand that there's going to be that knowledge transfer to the other people that I work with at that company. I'm more confident in buying decisions. So content is not just top of funnel, like you're saying, it's also bottom of funnel. I think it has a major impact. And I imagine there were a lot of folks who have come to those product pages because they said, all right, they get it and they get people like me. What can they do for me other than educate me on this content? Obviously, they're not like PPP loan officers. How can I work with these people? I'm sure content had a huge play there. Kind of zooming out from this campaign and thinking about, we talk about growth marketing. Now, growth marketing for us is anyone who has a growth mindset as a marketer or even as a business leader. We're interviewing folks who are even CEOs of companies, but are thinking about how to grow their business and are running campaigns, or maybe thinking about how to attract more buyers and interest. What's one thing that you've seen that growth marketers either should stop doing that they're doing now or start doing that they're not doing?
Take it back to basics.
Yep. Took the words out of my mouth.
That is honestly the most simplistic, just gives you that straightforward view of what you need to be doing, at least speaking from an SEO and content standpoint. Don't know much about the other things as much as I'd like, but when it comes to SEO, honing in on those basics, reading the Moz Beginner's Guide to SEO, which is basically the intro that literally anyone can have access to, read it, not have to sign up for an agency immediately, know who to hire down the road, listening to those Whiteboard Fridays, and just trying stuff out on your site is just it's as simple as it gets. If you have an idea, see how it falls in line with what are considered like blue sky recommendations, and just bring it back. Make it simple. Find a simple solution. Especially when you're growing a marketing, like an SEO marketing or content marketing team, you have to get the basics down before you can do anything advanced. And then you will take your steps into it, but you always have to remember your basics.
Yep.
I think the hack there too is that content marketing is essentially free. We like to talk about a lot of paid channels in marketing, and sometimes we get a lot of flack because marketing teams can spend a lot of budget, but your content strategy doesn't have to be expensive, right? Even a solo business owner could start putting content on their site today. Just start writing content that's relevant to their product and bringing in traffic and building authority that way. The other thing that I would add is that we really need to get in the minds of our audience. We talk about personas, we talk about target audience a lot, but COVID really highlighted the fact that people don't want to just buy from companies who talk about values but do nothing about them. People really are caring about that goodwill side of marketing. If you're not walking the talk, they're going to see through that really quickly. And so customers want to partner with these brands who deliver value, but who also deliver empathy and understanding.
No, I love
we
that.
all know someone who owns a small business, at least somewhere, or owns a company, or is actively in the trenches for the company that they're working for. And so it's easy to just ask them questions like, what do they worry about? They can be your people also ask box.
Yeah.
You don't need to go to Google and do the hack of clicking the people also ask it, all the FAQs, and write about those. You can talk to your neighbor, safely and from social distancing. You can send an email to your old boss to ask what things were you worried about, to add this human element that a lot of marketing seems to sometimes like divert from, where you're very much we want you, we want what you can give us, whereas this is going to be a transaction. I want to give you resources so you come back to support me too.
I like that. I like that phrasing. I noticed neither of you said spend a bunch of time on TikTok and Clubhouse, and I'm just shocked, frankly. It's not your
not
channel.
Really relevant to be, not really relevant to our industry.
We have to talk to a couple people about that, but as of right now, we still have to develop out our social strategy for 2021.
Good. Those are the basics, right? Start with the basics. That's good. That's a good lesson. Can you break down the structure of the marketing department as a whole? Obviously, the content marketing team we've talked a little bit about, but maybe where does content marketing sit in the whole wheel, let's say, of marketing for the company?
Yeah, well, like we've mentioned, we're still a growing team. So our marketing team is somewhat small. We have our partner folks, we have our demand and advertising folks, and then we have this content team as well, which has pretty much been a 3-woman content team. So
amazing.
Our organization is still growing. We're hiring if you're interested.
Very good. All right. Growth marketers out there, pay attention. Divvy is hiring.
We're open and remote.
Excellent. Yes. Excellent. So let's say other than the content marketing team, 3-woman powerhouse, which is incredible. The ads and paid side, paid acquisition, how big is that team right now?
Similar size.
Okay. Cool. All right. Then small and growing. I mean, incredible what you all are able to accomplish just from a small group of folks. But I'm hearing that pretty consistently from the marketers we're speaking with. A small band of believers who really are willing to get down in the trenches and work hard can accomplish incredible things. So reminder to those folks out there who are listening and watching, who are thinking that they need to hire 100 more marketers to scale. It doesn't have to scale linearly. We have some incredible power in marketing teams. So that's a great reminder. Who are some other marketers that maybe either of you or both of you look up to who we should maybe invite on the show and ask to share some of their thoughts in campaign success?
You have Rand Fishkin, you have Michael King, you have Ian Lurie, you have Alexis Sanders. There are so many talented SEOs from the content side, which is more my specialty, to the hyper technical.
I'm going to tell Rand Fishkin you recommended him. If I can get him on the show, I'm going to buy you lunch.
That would be fantastic. And that would be cool. Another Seattleite.
Yeah, absolutely. Rachel, any folks that we should be aware of or maybe invite on the show?
Yeah, there's a lot of cool teams here in Utah Valley that are really innovating in the marketing space. Let's see, some of my latest favorite follows. Gabe over at Lucid is all about building that brand powerhouse.
Yep.
Let's see, who are some others? The Marketing Millennials is a follow that is new for me, but everything they put out there is great. Any of those visualizations, I love.
Yeah, I'm a little Lucid obsessed. I love the brand. I love the team there. So they'll definitely be on the show. We've actually got some of that lined up, but these are some great recommendations. Now, everybody who's been listening and watching will definitely want to follow you. Where's the best place to follow you? The brand, first of all, and then you both individually, your whole team. I'm sure that they're going to get more from being a part of the kind of the Divvy network and your individual networks. Where would you recommend? Are you LinkedIn people, Twitter people? It sounds like Twitter, maybe, Stephanie, is your jam.
It's a mix between Twitter and LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, it's just Stephanie Newton Divvy. You can just look that up in the search bar. But on Twitter, it's N3W70N5 or Newton S in Elite.
Nice. Very
cool.
Out
that technical SEO. Yeah.
That's right. You're deep SEO.
Yeah, LinkedIn is a good follow for the brand, for the company, as well as for both of us. You can find us there. Please connect with us. We're always eager to learn and collaborate on new strategies and content that we can share together.
Absolutely. I'm sure we'll have you both back on the show at some point. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been a blast to hear from you and to learn from the success that you all are having there.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to Growth Marketing Camp. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you would give it a quick 5-star rating or share it with a friend or colleague looking to get a little more inspiration for their next campaign. If you want to learn more about the company behind the show, head to opensense.com. That's OPENSENSE.com. We'll catch you on the next episode.